A wizard spent 3,000 years chasing a single ring, and when it finally surfaced, it was in the pocket of the most unlikely creature imaginable. If you want to know how I got to Middle-earth, watch the video above the screen. The fire's warm, the night is long, and tonight we have a guest who was there for all of it. The battles, the secrets, the moments that shaped an entire age. Lean in, because Gandalf the White himself is about to tell you exactly what it felt like from the inside.
You want to know what it really looked like from where I was standing? Very well. I arrived in Middle-earth around the year 1000 of the Third Age. My task, and the task of the other Istari, was to support the free peoples against Sauron. Simple enough in theory. The trouble was, no one knew where Sauron was. No one knew where the ring was. No one knew when the confrontation would come, or what shape it would take. We were sent to prepare for a war whose date had not yet been written. Unlike my fellow wizards, I never settled. I roamed. The Westerlands, the wild roads, the forgotten corners of the map. And during those long wanderings, two things began to pull at me. The first was a darkness growing in southern Mirkwood, a presence cold and ancient that I could not ignore. The second was the Shire and the Hobbits. I confess I was rather fond of them. Perhaps too fond, some would say, but I trusted my instincts, and it was those instincts that eventually led me to the truth about the necromancer of Mirkwood. I had suspected it, I had feared it, and at last I knew it. The shadowy presence lurking in Dol Guldur was Sauron himself, returned, hiding, waiting. I persuaded the White Council, persuaded Saruman, which was no small feat, I assure you, that we should drive him out. And we did. We attacked, and he escaped, down to Mordor. The countdown had begun.
So by the time The Hobbit was happening, you already knew Sauron was back?
I knew, which is precisely why the years between Bilbo's adventure and the events you know as the Lord of the Rings were so unsettling for me, because during that time, I was doing something that consumed my every waking thought. I was piecing together a puzzle. Bilbo had a ring, a magic ring, he said, one that made him invisible. Now, rings of that sort are not common, but they are not impossible either. Yet something about it nagged at me, something I could not dismiss. Could it be the One Ring? That seemed preposterous. How would the One Ring, lost in the river Anduin for millennia, end up deep beneath the Goblin Kingdom, in the possession of a wretched creature called Gollum, and then just fall into the hands of a cheerful hobbit from the Shire? The sheer improbability of it should have made me dismiss it entirely, but I couldn't. I dare not take the ring myself. I knew what it would do to me, better than most, and I was fairly sure no one else knew where it was. So I did the only thing I could. I dug. I traced the ring's history from both ends. Aragorn and I hunted down Gollum, and from that wretched creature, I learned where the ring had been, and what it had done to him across 500 years of possession. Then I went to Minas Tirith. I spent long days in the dusty archives there, reading the account of Isildur, the man who had taken the ring from Sauron's very finger. And there it was, a detail, a single remarkable detail. Isildur had written that when the ring was placed in fire, letters appeared upon it, a verse, the verse of the One Ring. I rushed back to the Shire. I took the ring from Frodo. I dropped it into the hearth, and the letters appeared. In that moment, standing in Bag End with the firelight flickering and an old hobbit looking at me with wide eyes, I felt the full weight of what I was holding. The most powerful, the most dangerous, the most important artifact in all of Middle-earth, and it had been sitting quietly in a hobbit hole in the Shire for 60 years. Kept secret, kept safe, completely unknown to Sauron. How had this happened? I have thought about it a great deal. My conclusion is that it was not luck. It was providence. Eru Iluvatar, subtly, invisibly, had placed a hand upon events. Bilbo was meant to find that ring. And now, I was determined that its finding would not be wasted. I judged that Rivendell was the best immediate destination, safe, wise, and home to Elrond, whose counsel I valued above almost any other. There is a strange irony in that, by the way. Isildur himself had been carrying the ring to Rivendell to seek Elrond's advice when he was ambushed at the Gladden Fields and the ring slipped from his finger. 3,000 years later, through the riverbed of the Anduin, through the depths of the Misty Mountains, through the lonely mountain and the quiet roads of the Shire, it had finally completed that journey. Some roads simply cannot be rushed. Now, getting the ring to Rivendell required getting it out of the Shire without drawing Sauron's attention. Frodo agreed to use a cover story, moving to Crickhollow, and I agreed to accompany him. But the plan gave us a few months, and I was never one for sitting still. So I set out on a series of short journeys. I needed to brief Aragorn, the one man I trusted completely to guide Frodo if something went wrong, and I needed to gather intelligence. Dark tidings were coming from the south and east. I wanted to know what we were walking into. It was on one of those journeys that everything nearly came apart. Radagast found me near Bree. He carried a message from Saruman, a summons to Isengard. I was suspicious, but Saruman was the head of my order and genuinely knowledgeable about the enemy. If he had information, I needed it. I made a calculation. I couldn't finish my own information gathering and make it back in time to leave with Frodo. So I chose Isengard, but I left a letter for Frodo urging him to leave soon, asking Barlaman Butterbur to send it on. Barlaman forgot. I cannot be too harsh on the man. He runs a busy inn, but it was a costly oversight. Thankfully, my earlier visit to Aragorn meant Frodo was not entirely without protection once he reached Bree. You see, even my mistakes had contingency plans. What I found at Isengard confirmed my worst fears. Saruman had turned. He was building an army. He offered me partnership, co-domination he called it, as though the ring were simply a political tool to be divided and shared. I refused, and he imprisoned me. For 2 months I sat atop Orthanc, watching the fires of his treachery burn below, while Frodo was somewhere out in the wild with the Black Riders hunting him. That was not a comfortable 2 months.
How did you get out?
Gwaihir, the Wind Lord. He came for me, sent by Radagast, acting on my earlier request to send news to Isengard. The great eagle plucked me from the top of that tower and bore me away into the open sky. And the moment I was free, my mind was moving. I knew Frodo would have already set off. The plan had always been that he wouldn't wait indefinitely. I knew the Black Riders were hunting the Shire. I needed to find him, and fast. I asked Gwaihir if he could carry me to the Shire. He couldn't, not that distance. So I thought quickly. Edoras was slightly out of my way, but Rohan had the finest horses in all of Middle-earth. If I could get one of them, I got Shadowfax. Or rather, Shadowfax allowed himself to be caught. He has always been very particular about that distinction. I also saw Theoden's condition at Edoras, the king sitting hollow-eyed, half alive, aged far beyond his years. But there was no time to deal with that then. My priority was Frodo. I rode, hard. 6 days from Edoras to the Shire, at a speed that still astonishes me when I think about it. And when I arrived, Frodo was already gone. The gaffer told me His boy had left days earlier, with black riders on his heels. What followed was perhaps the most anxious stretch of the whole journey. I was tracking hobbits I couldn't find, following the trail of ring wraiths I could feel but not see, with no certainty that the ring was safe or the bearer alive. I rode to Crick Hollow. Nothing. I rode to Bree, and there, at the Prancing Pony, Aragorn's name came up, and relief washed over me like cold water. They were with him. They were together. Then I overtook them and rode to Weathertop. They were moving quietly, carefully, as hobbits do. I was thundering across the landscape on Shadowfax, which is not the subtlest approach. And inevitably, the Nazgul noticed. What happened at Weathertop that night? I will tell you plainly because I think it is underestimated. I fought all 9 of the Nazgul through the entire night, which is when they are at their strongest, and I emerged at dawn, unharmed. Aragorn and the hobbits could see the light and fire of that battle from miles away. But here is what I decided in the gray morning light, and it matters. I chose not to find them. I was drawing too much attention. The ring's best protection was stealth, and every time I charged across the landscape like an angry comet, I was lighting a beacon for every dark thing in the region. So I left a mark at Weathertop so Aragorn would know I'd been there, and I rode away, deliberately, drawing 4 of the 9 after me. That is why there were only 5 Nazgul when Frodo's company reached Weathertop. Not chance, choicer. I rode to Rivendell and waited, and when Frodo arrived, feverish, pale, barely breathing, I felt something that I rarely permit myself to feel. Fear. Real fear. Not for the mission, for him. The Council of Elrond was a gathering of proud, frightened, grieving people who all had their own claims on history and their own ideas about what should be done. I confess I did not make the decision simple. I presented the history of the ring. I stated my fears plainly, but I declined to name the obvious answer outright. I wanted it to come from the council, not from me. Thankfully, Elrond agreed. The fellowship was formed. My task was to lead the party southeast, and the question of how was complicated by one very significant obstacle: Saruman. The only truly safe route through the Misty Mountains was the Gap of Rohan, which ran directly past Isengard. Out of the question. So we tried the Redhorn Pass, high and cold and treacherous. The mountain itself seemed to fight us. We turned back, which left only one alternative: Moria. I had been through Moria before, crossing from the other direction. I knew the way. I knew its grandeur. I also knew what things lived in its deepest dark. Aragorn warned me, almost prophetically as it turned out. But I judged it still preferable to trying to creep past Saruman's forces. And then Pippin dropped a stone into a well. I will not dwell on what followed in terms of blame. What matters is what came next. The orcs flooded in, and behind them, a Balrog. I knew what it was the moment I felt it. A Maya like me, but ancient and fallen and terrible. A creature of shadow and flame from the earliest age of the world. And I knew in that same instant that of everyone in the fellowship, I was the only one who could face it. So I stood on the bridge. I declared myself a servant of the secret fire, wielder of the flame of Anor. I told it the dark fire would not avail it. I ordered it back to the shadow. In truth, it was not merely words. It was a declaration of what I represented against what it represented. Light against shadow. The fire that gives life against the fire that only destroys. It did not go back. What happened next? I will tell you as honestly as I can, though my memories of that passage are strange and broken. We fought, down from the bridge, falling into the deep water below, through the tunnels in the ancient dark, up through the endless stair, climbing for what felt like days, until we burst out onto the peak of Ziragzigil in a howling blizzard. We fought there until at last I threw down the Balrog, and it broke the mountainside as it fell. And then darkness took me. I wandered, I am told, out of thought and time. I do not remember it clearly. What I know is that I was sent back. Naked I lay upon the cold mountaintop. My task was not finished, and Eru Ilúvatar himself, I believe, returned me to complete it. I was no longer Gandalf the Grey. I had become what Saruman was supposed to be, the White, the head of my order. I had even forgotten for a time that I was called Gandalf, so complete was the change. Gwaihir found me again on that mountaintop and carried me to Lothlorien, where Galadriel healed me. There followed a period of movement, let us say, that I cannot fully account for here. What I can tell you is that during that time, it was almost certainly I who reached out to Frodo across distance, shouting at him in no uncertain terms to take off the ring when he sat on the high seat of Amon Hen, with the eye of Sauron burning above him. "Fool, take it off. Take it off. Take off the ring." He did. And then I found Aragorn, Legolas, and Gimli in Fangorn Forest, alive and exhausted, and the Fellowship, fragmented as it was, had something to work with again.
Everything had changed by then. The Fellowship was broken, Frodo was gone. What was your plan from that point?
My plan was the same as it had always been, get the ring to Mount Doom by stealth. But my role had changed entirely. I was no longer the guide. That part of the journey now belonged to Frodo and Sam, and to whatever providence watched over them. My task was everything else. Destroy Saruman, protect the free peoples, and above all, keep Sauron's attention on me. You understand what that means? I needed Sauron to be looking toward the wrong place entirely, while two small hobbits crept invisibly toward the one place in his realm he considered safe. I needed to give him something far more alarming to watch. I started in Rohan, Theoden, that hollow, diminished king I had seen at Edoras and had no time to help. I went back for him. I drove out the shadow that Grima Wormtongue had wrapped around his mind. I gave him back himself, and then I advised him to fortify at Helm's Deep, the most defensible position in Rohan, while I rode out to find the remnants of Erkenbrand's scattered force and bring them back. I arrived at Helm's Deep just in time. Then I rode with Theoden to Isengard and gave Saruman one final chance to repent. He refused, naturally. A surprise to absolutely no one. I stripped him of his power, broke his staff, and left Treebeard to watch over him in Orthanc. That entire sequence, healing Theoden, Helm's Deep, Isengard, took 3 days. I mention this not to boast, but because what I did next required me to immediately turn around and ride Shadowfax all the way to Minas Tirith, because Pippin had looked into the Palantir. Of course he had. Sauron had seen him, and crucially, he would now assume that the Hobbit with the ring had been captured by Saruman's forces at Isengard and brought to the Wizard's Tower. His attention would be on Isengard, on Pippin, on whatever he thought this small creature was doing with his great treasure. Every moment of that error was precious to me. So I took Pippin, and I rode for Minas Tirith as fast as Shadowfax could carry us. I needed Sauron to see us arrive at Gondor. I needed him to watch me. The day after we arrived, I rode out openly and rescued Faramir from the Nazgul. letting every dark eye that was looking see exactly what I was doing and where I was. Faramir also told me something vital. Frodo and Sam were still alive when he had last seen them. My plan was working. I just had to hold on. And then Sauron's army marched on Minas Tirith, and it fell to me to lead the defense of the city. Denethor had retreated into despair, burning himself alive rather than face what was coming, taking his grief and his pride and his broken hope down with him. I had no time for despair. I rode to the gate. I faced the Witch King of Angmar there, the Lord of the Nazgul, a creature whose very presence made the bravest men falter. I stood between him and the city. Make no mistake, Minas Tirith would have fallen that day had things gone differently. But they did not. Éowyn, Merry, Aragorn, Imrahil, they turned disaster into something that no one could have predicted. The battle was won. At a terrible cost, yes, but won. And yet, there was still the matter of keeping Sauron's gaze fixed upon us. I persuaded Aragorn and the commanders to do the one thing that would guarantee Sauron's complete attention: march on Mordor itself. I was honest with them. I told them plainly that they were likely marching to their doom, that Sauron outnumbered us beyond counting and his fortress was well prepared. But I also knew something about Sauron that he himself could not see. He could not imagine anyone wanting to destroy the ring. Power, that he understood. Conquest, that he expected. But destruction? Surrender of ultimate power. It was simply outside his conception of how the world worked. He would see Aragorn, heir of Isildur, marching on his gates with an army, and he would think, someone has the ring, and they are coming to use it. And while he stared at us, burning with that expectation, 2 tired hobbits were climbing the slopes of Mount Doom. So we marched, purposefully, but not too fast. We were buying time, after all. Even at the Black Gate, I played for every minute I could get, demanding to see the prisoner the mouth of Sauron claimed to have, drawing out the parley for as long as words would hold. But words can only last so long. The gate opened, the army came forth, and the last battle began. I did not fight in that final battle, not personally. I stood on a hilltop, white and cold as they described me, and I watched, waited. And then, something came over me, a sudden certainty, a vision perhaps, or simply the knowledge, deep in my bones, that it was done. I lifted my voice above the din of the battle. The eagles are coming, and deep inside Mount Doom, in a crevice above the fires of the earth, something impossible happened. Gollum, wretched, ruined, half-mad Gollum, took the ring for himself, and fell. The ring was destroyed. The tower of Sauron crumbled, the darkness broke, and into the silence of 10,000 men who had been waiting to die, I spoke clearly, so that all could hear. The realm of Sauron is ended. The ring-bearer has fulfilled his quest. Had I known it would end this way? Not exactly, but I had hoped. Long ago, far back at the beginning of all this, I had said something about Gollum, that he had some part yet to play, for good or ill, that the pity Bilbo had shown him might one day rule the fate of many. I was right. It was not cleverness that saved Middle-earth in the end. It was not power, nor strategy, nor force of arms. It was pity, a hobbit's mercy, shown to a wretched creature, decades before anyone knew it would matter, and perhaps a quiet touch from Eru Ilúvatar, guiding it all. Everything had ultimately gone according to plan. What followed were long, gentle goodbyes. I helped where I could, but the great work was done. The age was ending. A new one was beginning, and it would be for men, not for wizards, not for elves, not for the powers of old. But before I left, I did one thing that perhaps surprised those who knew me. Rather than escort the hobbits all the way home to the Shire, I turned aside to visit Tom Bombadil. Tom Bombadil, ancient beyond reckoning, indifferent to the ring, indifferent to power, indifferent to the great turning of ages. He simply is. He loves the world, the rain, the roots, the deep green things. He exists not to do, but to be. I said to those who asked, I have been a stone doomed to rolling, but my rolling days are ending, and Tom and I shall have much to say to one another. Centuries of tireless work on a mission I never truly wanted, if I am honest. I arrived in Middle-earth because I was sent, and I stayed because, in the end, I loved it. As a Maya, that was always the deeper truth of it. Fascination, love for this world and all the stubborn, remarkable creatures in it. At the Grey Havens, I stepped onto the ship, and finally, I went home. That was my reward.
That is the full picture. 3 ages of patience, centuries of gathering shadows and scattered clues, all converging on 2 hobbits and a crack of fire in the heart of Mordor. Gandalf didn't just support the quest, he orchestrated it, sacrificed himself for it, and then, almost invisibly, turned himself into the biggest distraction in the history of Middle-earth just to give it a chance. The plan worked, not because of power, because of trust, and pity, and providence. Drop your thoughts in the comments. What surprised you most about Gandalf's side of the story?